The knock came out of nowhere, late at night, deep in the countryside, where no one should have been. My grandmother used to tell this story like it happened yesterday. She had a sharp memory, the kind where every detail stayed clear no matter how much time passed. This happened in the late 1970s, in what was then the outskirts of Detroit, back when the area was mostly empty land, dirt roads, and silence. Their home sat far back from the road on 10 acres. To one side was open farmland stretching for half a mile. To the other, the same. The only nearby house belonged to my great-grandparents, about 200 feet away. It was quiet out there. Too quiet. That night, my grandfather was working the midnight shift at an auto plant. My grandmother was alone with the kids, sitting in the living room watching TV. It was sometime close to midnight when she heard it. A knock. Not loud. Not frantic. Just deliberate. She froze for a moment, then stood and walked to the front window. The moonlight gave her just enough visibility to scan the driveway. No car. Nothing on the road either. That was the first thing that didn't feel right. Instead of opening the door, she thought fast. Their house was a tri-level, which meant the bedroom window upstairs looked directly down over the front door. She quietly went upstairs, opened the window, and leaned out. A man stood below on the porch. "What do you want?" she called down. The man looked up, squinting slightly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. My car broke down up the road. I was hoping I could use your phone." His voice sounded normal enough. Calm. Maybe a little too calm. "Where's your car?" she asked. "Just up the road," he said, pointing vaguely into the darkness. "I'm on my way to my girlfriend's place. She lives at the corner." That's when something clicked in her mind. If his car really broke down where he said it did, he would have been much closer to his girlfriend's house than hers. He wouldn't have walked half a mile in the wrong direction. The story didn't make sense. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice firm now. "I can't help you." The man's tone changed immediately. "Please," he said, stepping closer to the door. "I just need the phone. I'll be quick. I swear." "No," she replied. "You need to leave." There was a pause. A shift in the air. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Running across the gravel from somewhere in the darkness near the garage. Before she could even process it, another man came charging out of the shadows and slammed into the ground hard, like he'd been tackled. The man on the porch didn't hesitate. He turned and sprinted off into the night without another word. My grandmother looked back toward the driveway, her heart racing. There, in the dim light, she saw two figures struggling on the ground. One man was on top, throwing punches. Quick, controlled, powerful. The other tried to fight back, but it wasn't working. After a few seconds, the man on the bottom managed to break free. He scrambled to his feet and ran after his partner, disappearing into the darkness. Silence returned just as suddenly as it had been broken. What my grandmother didn't know during that conversation was that there had been two men the entire time. While one distracted her at the door, the other had been hiding, pressed flat against the front of the house near the garage, completely out of sight. They were waiting for her to open the door. Waiting for one small mistake. But they didn't know someone else was watching. At the house next door, my great-grandparents' place, my cousin happened to be visiting that night. He'd been sitting at the kitchen table, looking out the window when he noticed two figures approaching my grandparents' house. He watched as one of them slipped into hiding, and the other walked up and knocked. He didn't wait to see what would happen next. He ran. Full speed across the yard, straight into the dark. By the time he reached the house, the man in hiding never saw him coming. He hit him hard, knocking him straight to the ground. Here's the part that makes the whole thing even more unreal. At the time, my cousin was a boxing champion in the Naval Pacific Fleet. The man never stood a chance. After it was over, my grandmother called the police. They searched the area, but the two men were gone. No car was ever found. No suspects identified. Just a gone. But they didn't leave completely empty-handed. On the ground, near the driveway, two teeth were found, knocked clean out during the fight. My grandmother kept them. To this day, she still has those teeth sealed inside a small glass bottle. A quiet reminder of the night she almost opened the door, and what might have happened if she had. The message didn't make any sense until everything else started happening. It was a normal night. My wife and I had just come back from watching a movie. Nothing special, just a quiet evening. We got home around 9 p.m., driving through our neighborhood like we had done 100 times before. It's a clean, middle to upper middle class area. New houses, quiet streets, the kind of place where nothing strange is supposed to happen. Before pulling into our driveway, I remembered I had an Amazon package coming. Our neighborhood doesn't have individual mailboxes. Instead, there's a shared set at the end of the street. So we stopped there first. My package was inside, just like I expected. But there was something else. A letter. It had my name typed neatly on the front. No handwriting. No return name either. Just an address from the street directly behind ours. That alone felt off. We didn't really know anyone in the neighborhood yet, so curiosity got the better of me. I opened it right there in the car. Inside was a single piece of paper. Typed. No signature. It said, "We are watching you, Mr. Sexperver." Below the message was a crude drawing of two eyes staring straight ahead. For a second, I honestly thought it was some kind of joke. A bad one. Then it sank in. My wife looked at me, confused and uneasy. What is that supposed to mean? I have no idea, I said. And I meant it. I wasn't hiding anything. I had never done anything remotely like what that message suggested. No weird history, no secrets, nothing. If anything, I was probably the most boring guy you could imagine. We drove home in silence. As soon as we got inside, my wife started to get anxious. I felt something different, anger mixed with confusion. Someone knew my name, my address, and they were accusing me of something that made no sense. So I called the sheriff's department. They told me they'd send someone out, but couldn't guarantee how fast. That's when things started to get worse. We had been home for maybe 5 minutes when suddenly, my car alarm went off. Loud, sudden, continuous. At first, I thought I had accidentally triggered it with my key fob. It had happened before. I grabbed it and hit the button to turn it off. Nothing. I pressed it again. Still nothing. The alarm kept screaming into the night. Frustrated, I kept pressing the button over and over until, out of anger, I threw the key fob onto the floor. It cracked open. "Great," I muttered. My wife quickly grabbed her keys and managed to turn it off. The silence that followed felt heavy. Something wasn't right. We looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. This wasn't random. "Let's go check that address," she said. Part of me didn't want to, but curiosity, and maybe a need for answers, pushed me forward. We got back in the car and drove to the street listed on the envelope. It was directly behind our house, just like we thought. We found the number, or at least where it should have been. Because it didn't exist. The houses skipped right over it. If that number had been real, it would have lined up almost perfectly with our backyard. That sent a chill through me. Before we could even process that, we noticed something else. Our neighbors were outside. Both the ones next door and the ones across the street were standing together, talking loudly, clearly shaken. We got out of the car and walked over. "What's going on?" I asked. Our neighbor pointed down the street. "Did you hear your alarm going off?" "Yeah," I said. "Just now." He shook his head. "It wasn't just yours. The car parked between our houses. Its alarm was going off too." I frowned. "I didn't hear that." "You wouldn't have," he said. "Yours was so loud it drowned it out." Then the neighbor across the street spoke up. "I came outside because of the noise," he said. "And there was a car sitting right in front of my house." What kind of car? I asked. Black. Lights off. Just sitting there. My stomach tightened. What happened next? I stepped outside to see what was going on, he continued. The second I did, the car took off. Fast. No headlights. Nothing. He paused. I tried to see the plate, but it was too dark. For a moment, no one said anything. Then, almost like something out of a movie, two sheriff's cars pulled up at the same time. One for my call, one for theirs. We explained everything: the letter, the alarms, the car. The deputies listened carefully, but you could tell they didn't have answers. They asked the usual questions. Do you have any enemies? No. Any issues with neighbors? No. Anyone who might want to scare you? No. Any past accusations or incidents? Absolutely not. Every answer led nowhere. They took the letter as evidence, wrote up a report, and handed me a card. Call us if anything else happens. And then they left. Just like that. The street went quiet again. But it didn't feel safe anymore. That night, I barely slept. Every small noise made me alert. Every shadow outside the window felt like someone watching. Because that's what the letter said, right? We are watching you. What stuck with me the most wasn't just the message. It was how deliberate everything felt. The fake return address. The timing of the letter. The car sitting in the dark. The alarms going off at the same time. None of it felt random. Whoever did this knew the area. Knew where I lived. Knew how to get close without being seen. And worst of all, they wanted me to know they were there. But not who they were. Even now, nothing else has happened. No second letter. No sign of that car again. No explanation. Just that one message. And the feeling that somewhere nearby, someone is still watching. Waiting. For something I don't understand. The cabin looked abandoned, until we stepped inside. I was around 13 or 14 when it happened. My best friend Pat invited me on a camping trip with his dad and a couple of his uncles. It was one of those becoming a man kind of weekends. Fishing, campfires, staying up late, and doing things we thought made us grown up. We drove a couple of hours north, far enough that I couldn't tell you exactly where we were anymore. Eventually, we pulled the truck off the road, hid it behind some brush, and carried a canoe down to a river. From there, we paddled for a long time until we reached a quiet lake. That's where we set up camp. Across the water, maybe a few hundred yards out, there was a cabin. Even from a distance, it looked wrong. The roof sagged slightly. The wood looked worn and gray. Bushes and weeds had grown up around it like nature was trying to swallow it whole. No lights. No movement. It looked completely abandoned. At some point in the afternoon, while the adults were fishing and drinking, they told us we could explore a bit, but not to go too far. Of course, we ignored the not too far part. We convinced them to let us take the canoe across the lake. Looking back now, there's no way I'd let kids do that. But they weren't really paying attention. So we paddled out. The closer we got, the worse the cabin looked. The windows were dirty. One of them was slightly open, creaking with the breeze. The front door looked warped and old. We stepped onto the shore and walked up. No sound. No sign of life. Pat looked at me. You think anyone's in there? I shrugged. Doesn't look like it. He pushed the door. It opened. That was the first mistake. The second was stepping inside. Because the moment we did, we knew someone lived there. It didn't look abandoned at all on the inside. There were beer bottles scattered across a table. A tray with weed and rolling papers. A bong sitting out in plain sight. Old magazines, adult ones, spread everywhere like no one cared to hide them. And on a shelf, against the wall, 2 shotguns. We just stood there for a second, trying to process it. This is bad, I said quietly. Yeah, Pat agreed. We should go. But we didn't, because we were kids. Instead, we walked deeper inside. At one point, we even picked up the shotguns, just holding them, pretending we were tough. We didn't load them or pull anything, but it was still one of the dumbest things we could have done. We checked a couple more rooms. And then we found the one that made my stomach drop. Mannequins. Several of them. Standing in the corner. None of them had clothes on, but each one had a wig. Different colors. Different styles. Some long, some short. They just stood there, lifeless, but arranged in a way that felt intentional. Watching. Something about that room felt deeply wrong. We didn't say it out loud, but we both felt it. Let's go, Pat said. This time, we actually listened to ourselves. We put everything back exactly where we found it and left as quickly as we could. We got back into the canoe and paddled hard, not saying much until we reached our side of the lake. When we told Pat's dad what we saw, his expression changed immediately. "What do you mean someone's living there?" he asked. We explained everything. The mess. The magazines. The guns. The mannequins. He went quiet for a moment. That evening, things felt different. The adults were still drinking and fishing, but there was an edge now. A tension that hadn't been there before. As the sun started to go down, we sat around the fire eating fish Pat had caught. That's when we heard it. A motor. We all turned toward the lake. A small boat was coming straight toward us. 2 men were inside. They pulled up to the shore like they belonged there. At first, everything seemed normal. They smiled, made small talk, joked around a little. Just 2 guys out on the water. But then they started asking questions. Too many questions. "Just you guys out here? Been here long? Catch anything good?" Their eyes kept drifting toward me and Pat. Then one of them said, "You boys should come hang out at our place. Got a cabin across the water." My chest tightened. Pat's dad didn't hesitate. "No, they're staying here." The men laughed it off, but they didn't leave. They just lingered, talking, smiling, watching. It got darker. The air felt heavier. At one point, they asked again. "Just the boys, then? They can come over for a bit." This time, Pat's dad's voice changed. "No," he said more firmly. Silence. The men exchanged a look. Something passed between them, something we didn't understand, but definitely felt. After what felt like forever, they finally started their boat and left. No one spoke for a while after that. That night, things were different. Pat and I went into the tent, but we didn't sleep much. We just lay there whispering, replaying everything in our heads. Outside, we could hear the adults. They didn't go to bed. They stayed up all night by the fire, talking quietly, watching the lake, waiting. Morning came slowly. And the second it did, everything was packed up. No breakfast, no fishing, no discussion. "We're leaving," Pat's dad said. We didn't argue. We loaded the canoe, paddled back, and made our way to the truck. The whole drive home felt tense. Quiet. At one point, Pat's dad admitted it. "Those guys weren't right," he said. No one disagreed. Years later, I still think about that cabin. About the mannequins. The guns. The way those men looked at us. And how quickly everything could have gone wrong if we had accepted that invitation. It started like any normal walk, until he pulled something out of his pocket that made my stomach drop. I'm a dog walker, so I spend a lot of time alone in parks and wooded trails. I'm used to being aware of my surroundings, but I've never really had a reason to feel unsafe. Until this happened. It was a quiet day. I had 3 small dogs with me, friendly little things, definitely not the kind that would scare anyone off. We were walking along one of my usual routes when a man suddenly appeared on the path ahead. I didn't hear him coming. 1 second the trail was empty. The next, he was just there. He looked normal enough. Middle-aged, thin build, wearing shorts and a hoodie. Nothing about him immediately raised alarms. "Hey," he said casually, falling into step beside me. "Hi," I replied, trying to stay polite. At first, the conversation was harmless. Weather, dogs, the usual small talk you have with strangers in a park. I didn't think much of it. Then he said something that made me pause. "I saw another dog walker yesterday," he said. "She had a nervous dog. I tried to help socialize him." I glanced at him. "Oh, yeah," he continued. "I know a lot about dogs." I took out my slip lead to help, but she freaked out. That didn't sit right with me. If you know anything about dogs, you don't just approach a stranger's nervous dog and try to put a slip lead on it. That's not normal behavior. Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled one out. A slip lead. He held it up like he was showing off something impressive. "This," he said. One of the dogs I was walking, normally the friendliest of the three, let out a low, warning growl. That had never happened before. The man just laughed. Not loudly, not nervously, just casually, like it didn't matter. That's when the feeling hit me. Something was wrong. I suddenly became very aware of how alone I was. No one else on the path. No nearby voices. Just trees, silence, and this man walking way too close to me. Why did he have that in his pocket? Why was he telling me this? And why did it feel like he wasn't really talking about dogs at all? I forced a small smile. I should probably get going. He didn't stop walking. Just stayed right beside me. Watching. The dogs were acting differently now. Sticking close to my legs, glancing back at him, tense. I needed an exit. Fast. "My dad's waiting for me in the parking lot," I said suddenly. "I don't want to keep him waiting." That wasn't true. But I said it with enough confidence that it sounded real. The man stopped. Finally. "Oh," he said, still smiling. "All right." I kept walking. I didn't run. I didn't turn around. But I could feel his eyes on my back the entire time. The dogs didn't relax either. They kept looking behind us, uneasy. When I finally reached my car, I got in quickly and locked the doors. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. My hands were shaking. I sat there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened. And then it really hit me. He didn't have a dog. He wasn't walking anywhere in particular. He just appeared. And he had that slip lead ready in his pocket. Why? The more I thought about it, the worse it felt. Everything about that interaction was off. The way he approached me. The story that didn't quite make sense. The fact that he laughed when the dog growled. The way he watched me leave. I didn't want to brush it off. So I called the police. I reported everything. What he looked like, where it happened, what he said, what he showed me. They took it seriously. And honestly, that made me feel even worse. Because it meant I wasn't overreacting. Since then, I've changed how I work. I don't walk those trails alone anymore. I stay in more open areas. And I trust my instincts a lot more than I used to. Because sometimes, danger doesn't look dangerous. Sometimes it just looks normal. Until it isn't. I knew something was wrong about 10 minutes into the date, but by then, I was already too far from home. I was around 20 at the time, recently single, and trying out dating apps for the first time. That's how I matched with him, Alex. He wasn't really my type, but his profile seemed normal. He said he was in school, had a job, a car, friends. Nothing stood out as a red flag. So when he asked me out, I said yes. That was my first mistake. He picked me up for what he called a driving date. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Looking back now, I have no idea why I agreed to get into a stranger's car. From the moment I got in, something felt off. He turned the music up, loud. Way too loud. Windows down, bass blasting, and he started shouting the lyrics at the top of his lungs as we drove through busy streets. People were staring. I laughed nervously at first, then asked if he could turn it down a bit. He just grinned. Everyone loves it. They didn't. But I stayed quiet. We drove like that for about 40 minutes until we reached downtown. Out of nowhere, he pulled over near a large, well-known building. Then he got out of the car. No explanation. He walked a few steps away, stared up at the building, and just stood there. I sat in the passenger seat, completely confused. After a minute or two, he jumped back in like nothing happened. "Let's get food," he said. Like that moment never existed. I should have asked him to take me home right then. But I didn't. We kept driving, and driving, and driving. Instead of getting food nearby, he took us 2 cities over. At this point, we'd been in the car for hours. I didn't recognize where we were anymore. That's when the conversation took a turn. Out of nowhere, he started saying things that made me deeply uncomfortable. Comments that were offensive, aggressive, completely out of place. Then, just as suddenly, he shifted again. "I'm a really depressed person," he said, his tone flat. "Can you relate to that?" I didn't know what to say. I had known this man for maybe 2 hours. I gave a vague response, trying to keep things calm. Because by now, I was starting to feel it. Fear. I was in his car, far from home, and something about him was unstable. We eventually stopped for food. I barely ate. I just wanted the night to end. But it didn't. After we left, instead of heading back, he took the long way. What should have been an hour drive turned into 3. By the time we got closer to my city, it was late, around 11:30 p.m. Dark. Quiet. Empty roads. That's when it got worse. He turned into a neighborhood I didn't recognize and started driving fast. Too fast. Sharp turns. Sudden acceleration. No warning. "Can you slow down?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're scaring me." He didn't respond right away. Then he turned and looked at me, completely expressionless. "You know," he said slowly, "I've had some really hard days in my life." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. He kept driving. "Sometimes I used to come out and drive like this," he continued, "just looking for squirrels, so I could run them over." Silence filled the car, so something else could feel what I felt. I didn't know how to react. Every instinct in my body was screaming that something was very wrong. I forced myself to stay calm. "Do you still do that?" I asked quietly. He paused, then smiled slightly. "No, not anymore." I didn't believe him, but I nodded like I did, because I didn't know what he was capable of. At that point, we were about 10 minutes from my house. I thought I was almost safe. I was wrong. "Have you ever been to that park?" he asked suddenly, pointing ahead. I knew the park he meant. It sat at the bottom of a hill, surrounded by trees. Isolated. Especially at night. "Yes," I said quickly. I didn't want to go there. "Oh, perfect," he said. "You can show me around." Before I could say anything, he turned and drove down the dark road leading into it. There were barely any lights. The parking lot was empty. No cars. No people. Nothing. My heart was pounding. This is it, I thought. This is where something bad happens. He parked. The engine idled. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he turned toward me. His whole demeanor changed again, like flipping a switch. He leaned in and tried to kiss me. I pulled back. He didn't stop. He got more aggressive, trying to pull me closer, his hands moving in ways I didn't want. I kept pushing him away, repeating, "No, stop." Eventually, he did. Not because he understood, but because something in the moment shifted. Without saying much, he started the car again, and drove me home. The rest of the ride was silent. When we pulled up to my house, I got out as fast as I could. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. I just went inside and locked the door. My hands were shaking. My heart wouldn't slow down. I kept replaying everything in my head. Every moment where I ignored a red flag. Every time I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. I blocked his number that same night. And I never saw him again. But even now, I think about how easily that night could have ended differently. Because once you're in someone else's car, you're trusting them with everything. And sometimes, that trust is misplaced. He learned my name without me ever telling him, and that's when I knew I wasn't safe. I was 12 years old, new to the area, and starting at a school where I didn't know anyone. My mom would drop me off early in the morning, around 7:10, even though school didn't start until 8:40. The problem was, the school didn't let students inside early. So every morning, I had to wait. Right next to the school was a Starbucks. A lot of students went there to pass the time, so my mom started dropping me off there instead. At first, I didn't even go inside. I felt awkward taking up space without buying anything, so I would sit outside in the heat, alone, for almost an hour. That's where he first saw me. He worked there. The first time he approached me, he seemed friendly enough. He came outside, smiled, and started talking. He complimented my hair, said I had a beautiful face. Then he asked for my name. I told him I wasn't comfortable sharing it. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. After that, he started paying attention to me. Every day. Eventually, I worked up the courage to go inside instead of sitting in the heat. It felt safer being around other people. But that's when things got worse. He would make me drinks without asking. Just hand them to me like it was normal. I didn't like accepting them, but I didn't know how to say no without causing a scene. I felt trapped between being polite and feeling uncomfortable. He would come over and talk to me while I sat alone. Too often. Too familiar. Like he already knew me. One day, it crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I walked in, and he was cleaning the floor. Music was playing over the speakers. When he saw me, he started singing, but he changed the lyrics. He sang about me, describing what I was wearing, talking about my hair like I was some kind of character in a story. People were watching. I felt my face burn with embarrassment. I grabbed the drink he had already made for me and went to sit down, turning my back so he couldn't see my face. I felt sick. Not long after that, things got even more disturbing. One morning, I was dropped off earlier than usual. I walked in, hoping he wouldn't be there. But he was. And this time, he called out to me. By name. Except, I had never told him my name. He said it wrong, mispronounced, but it was close enough that I froze. I walked up to the counter slowly, trying to stay calm. He slid a hot drink toward me. For your teacher, he said. I frowned. What? He smiled. The one who told me your name. My stomach dropped. The day before, one of my teachers had come into the store. He must have asked her about me. She probably didn't think anything of it. But he did. He used it. I pushed the drink back toward him. I'm not taking that, I said quietly. And I left. After that, I tried to avoid him as much as possible. I started keeping my head down, sitting in different places, only going in on days I thought he wouldn't be working. But it didn't matter. He always seemed to notice me. He would call out to me, try to talk, offer more drinks, tell me I was beautiful. It didn't feel like kindness. It felt like something else. Something I didn't understand at the time. But I felt it. Fear. One day after school, I saw him outside talking to two women. He was smiling, laughing, acting normal. But when I walked past, I kept my hood up and avoided eye contact. I didn't want him to see me. I didn't want him to know I was there. That's what it had come to. I was afraid of being noticed. Even now, looking back, what scares me the most isn't just what he did. It's how easy it was for him. He knew my routine, knew where I'd be every morning, learned my name without my permission, and used small, harmless gestures to stay close to me. No threats, no obvious danger, just a slow, steady crossing of boundaries. The kind that makes you question yourself, makes you wonder if you're overreacting. But I wasn't. I was a child, and he knew it. I never reported him. I never told anyone. I just avoided that place whenever I could. But even now, I think about how easily something worse could have happened. Because sometimes, the scariest people aren't the ones who chase you. They're the ones who slowly make their way into your space, until you don't feel safe anywhere. I thought the worst thing that could happen was falling asleep at the wheel, until someone tried to get into my car in the middle of nowhere. This happened a couple of years ago during a long drive to work. It was about a 5-hour trip, and I had already been on the road for 3 hours when the fatigue started to hit me hard. It was late. Completely dark. The road cut through dense forest. Nothing but tall trees on both sides. No streetlights, no houses, no other cars. Just empty asphalt and the occasional insect hitting the windshield. I tried to fight it. I stopped at a gas station, grabbed coffee and snacks, and got back on the road. For a while, it worked. Then the tiredness came back stronger. My eyes started to close for just a second at a time. At one point, I drifted slightly off the road and snapped awake. That's when I knew I had to stop. Immediately. I couldn't risk driving any further like that. A few minutes later, I spotted a small pull-off area. A little space on the side of the road meant for quick stops. Not a proper rest area, just a patch of gravel where you could park. It was completely empty. I pulled in, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment. Silence. Total silence. No wind. No animals. Nothing. I rolled the windows down slightly and listened. Still nothing. That gave me a bit of comfort. I rolled them back up, locked the doors, and leaned my seat back to get some rest. I even took off my shoes and placed them on the passenger seat. I remember thinking, I'll just close my eyes for a minute. That was all it took. I fell asleep instantly. I don't know how long I was out. It couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. But something woke me up. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. A bright light filled the car, hitting my eyes directly. For a split second, I thought it was a flashlight. Then I realized. It was headlights. A car had pulled up behind me. Before I could fully process that, I saw movement in my side mirror. Someone was walking toward my car. A man. He moved quickly, purposefully, heading straight for the back door on the driver's side. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe he just wants to check if I'm okay. Maybe he needs help. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. He didn't knock. He didn't say anything. Instead, he grabbed the door handle and yanked it hard. My heart jumped into my throat. He was trying to open the door. Panic hit instantly. I hit the car horn as hard as I could. The sound exploded into the silence, loud and aggressive. The man flinched, clearly startled. That gave me a second, maybe 2. My seat was still fully reclined, making it nearly impossible to reach the pedals properly. I scrambled to sit up, pulling myself forward while trying to start the car at the same time. Everything felt slow, clumsy, wrong. The engine turned over. I threw the car into gear and slammed the gas. The tires screeched as I sped out of the pull-off area, barely in control because of how awkward my position was. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The man was standing there, watching me. And he wasn't alone. 2 more figures stepped into the light behind him. 3 men. One of them was holding something in his hand. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it looked like a tool. Something heavy. Something you wouldn't want used on you. That's when the fear really hit. This wasn't someone checking if I was okay. This was something else. Something planned. I pressed harder on the gas, speeding down the empty road far faster than I should have. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. I didn't slow down for a long time. Eventually, after what felt like forever, but was probably about 30 minutes, I reached a gas station. Bright lights. People. Safety. I pulled in, parked, and just sat there for a moment, trying to calm down. My whole body was trembling. I adjusted my seat back into position, put my shoes on, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. The next day, I told my boss about it. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, that area's known for road pirates." I frowned. Road pirates. Groups that wait for drivers to stop, he explained. Then they rob them. Sometimes take the car too. I felt a chill run down my spine. I thought back to the way the man had pulled on my door. The way the others appeared behind him. The object in his hand. Could it have been something harmless? Maybe. A flashlight. A tool. Maybe they really did want to help. But if that were true, why didn't he knock? Why didn't he speak? Why try to force the door open? Oh. Whatever their intentions were. I'm glad I didn't find out. Because out there, in the middle of nowhere, with no one around to hear you, you don't get a second chance.